So how do you find that fine line?
The right place, right time. I think I was like the only girl, the only soloist. I was the youngest, the only person from the UK. 80% of the bands and artists that I toured with are now no longer in the music industry. How many musicians get to say that now?
It's the butterfly effect.
100%. I'd get people in high school making fun of me.
You could be missing out on something like unbelievable.
I could do 10 hours saxophone practice a day. I would not get grade 8.
Music is now a full-time job. We're still totally independent and we love it like that.
The ability to motivate yourself to better yourself.
If you're growing up doing piano lessons, singing lessons, whatever it is, through your early years, that will obviously feel like a massive talent step.
The man with the most talent, Lionel Messi, who's like the best footballer ever. And then you've got Cristiano Ronaldo, who may not have the most talent, but he worked the hardest.
How do you guys use social media in your advantage?
Why would anyone want to look at me? But
I took a big social media break.
Why?
Don't get too obsessed with numbers or constantly being on social media. Like, never lose the artist.
we're all musicians, we're not social media influencers.
Yeah, we want to be as big as Foo Fighters, but we don't want to do social media. Imagine if the Beatles were starting out now. They wouldn't use social media.
Hello everyone, we're here today with another session of Talk to Shawn. Today we're here with Team Bronnie. Guys, how are you doing? Okay?
Yeah, super good.
Good to have you finally, right?
I know, after months of planning this, it's happening.
How did this movement of Team Bronnie happen? Where did it start?
I kind of started doing really rubbish YouTube covers in sixth form, like most musicians, really.
Yes.
In fact, you did drum covers, didn't you, as well in high school?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
We've all
weren't
done it.
great, but it's like a rite of passage. Really, as a musician.
And I was kind of producing them, obviously really, really rubbish. And Pete got in touch because he lives in the town next to me.
Okay.
He was like, "Oh, yeah, if you need any producers and all that, we can maybe songwrite as well. Love to do that." So then we started working together. Started
Yeah,
writing
that would have
songs.
been, what,
2015.
2015?
Yeah.
Not so long ago though.
I know. How time flies. And then we just started working together.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, when I was doing YouTube covers, I was kind of building a fan base on social media. And then Ryan Seacrest saw my cover of Amnesia by 5 Seconds of Summer, put me into this big contest of, the best cover of this song. Everyone's got to vote for their favourite, and if you win, you get to be on his radio show in LA. You get to fly over, and I think I was like the only girl, the only soloist. I was the youngest, the only person from the UK, and I was like, right, not gonna win. This will be fun. Ended up making it to the final. It was me against this massive band, and literally the last half hour before the votes came in, Louis Tomlinson from One Direction tweeted telling everyone to go vote for me.
Wow.
Which was just crazy. And then I had like a new fan base from that. And with the help from social media and his tweet, I was gaining this fan base, got asked to do tours, but I was touring alone with like a backing track and all that. Not,
It's not rock and roll.
when you're in pop punk, you're like, hi. And Pete was like, well, how about, we've been working for years. How
It's like,
about...
I know all the guitar parts.
Yeah. And then Pete's brother, George, is also a drummer. So you kind of
We sort of
sorted it all out.
put that band together. We had a bassist as well that you knew, didn't you? And yeah, so we went out and did one tour together, didn't we, in that lineup? And then my brother, he was studying at the time. He was in university, so he came to a point where like the touring was getting like he couldn't balance it with his studies, so he was just getting to the point where he was like, I'm not sure how long I can keep doing this, and that's when we met this guy.
And then we met Chris.
Yeah. So I was in another band, and then I didn't want to do that anymore, and I was kind of like, I want to do session work where, like, I'm sure people who are listening to this will understand what session work is, but you get paid by the job. And I played with Bron, we toured together loads, like we were all friends at that point, and they were kind of like, oh yeah, George can't do it anymore, do you want to play drums for us? But actually no, before that it was like your bass player had I'd like depped for him, so I played bass a couple of times for Bron before I played drums for her. And then George, Pete's brother, had to like step back to carry on with his studies. and it was kind of like it was a bit of a smooth
It was
transition, really, because
like,
I knew all
yeah.
the stuff anyway. So it was quite like seamless the way it all kind of came together, the three of us.
Oh, right place, right time.
Yeah.
And like you say, you knew because you'd been touring with us, so you knew half the songs anyway, and then you jumped on and played bass. So by the time you came to playing drums, it was just a really nice handover. And there was a couple, as you say, where you were on stage but not drumming. Just straight behind
and
the
that's
kit.
the thing, like there was no teething problems with any of us coming together. When Pete came in, he already knew the parts. When I came in, I already knew the parts. And like and we were all socially we'd worked together and we were friends before we actually even played music together. So there was never teething problems there, which was really nice. And like, obviously, like I'm not gonna speak on your behalf, but like as a woman in the industry, sometimes it can be quite difficult to like find the right balance with certain people who you work with, because you're, I'll say ostracized, but like the percentage wise, it's definitely especially in the genre, it's more male dominated. So yeah, it was quite nice to like have a good balance and the right people to like really champion what you're doing.
Oh, totally. Like, we're all just best mates now. Do you know what I mean? Like, if it's not music, we're still hanging out, you know, annoying each other. But it was the right place, right time. And as soon as we had our lineup, all these great gigs started coming in. So straight off the bat, after that tour, we got to support Neck Deep, who were like really big pop punk band, supported Blink-182, you know.
Not as Neck Deep had.
I wish. And, you know, getting all these festivals, and, you know, this summer we supported Don Broco, you know, massive band. And, all these festivals are coming in, and it's kind of, as soon as we all clicked, it was like the universe was like, right, it's time.
Have you thought about, like, not putting that video out there and thinking what would have happened if I didn't put that video out there?
100%. Like, when I was starting doing social media, I'd get people in high school making fun of me, just like everyone would. You know, you're at that age, people think it's funny. And I was like, right, this is the last cover I'm going to do, and I'll just do something else in my life. And I'm like, if I never have posted that.
It's the butterfly effect.
Oh, it is?
I mean, literally, when we... I've had time, I'm sure, like so many people, like musicians and people who work in music at the moment, where you go like, nah, I'm done with it. Like, I'm going to go get a proper job and I'm done with it. And I had that so many times. And literally, I was at that point with music in general. So when me and Bron were working together, but I wasn't playing guitar for Bron and we were writing and recording bits, I was in another band, and that band had done all right, and then it had come to an end. And at that point, I was like, you know, I might do a bit of music here and there for fun, and we'll see. And then we sat down and had a chat where we were like, well, do you want to, like, should we make this the band and do it? And at that point, I was like, I'm never playing live again. I'm done with music. I'm like, I want to do studio stuff, but I'm never touching, like, never getting out on the stage again. And then since then, I haven't. And literally, if that conversation, if you hadn't just dropped me a message and been like, oh, let's go for a chat and see, you know, that wouldn't have happened. And now here we are. And all those little moments, hugely important. I know, like I said, I've probably had about 6 of them just in my life of going, like, I'm done with it. And then something just finds a way. It's like, I think there is that thing, if you're a musician, you're really dying to do it, like, you kind of can't help yourself. Like, you'll end up doing it somehow or another.
I completely resonate with that, but it, like, because I understand it, but I was never in that position where I was like dying to do it. Like, I hold the fact that I'm doing what I'm doing to my mate Joe, because he was like, like, I'm in this band, or like, just joined this band and they need a drummer because the drummer's not very good. Do you want to give it a go? And I was like, yeah, I guess. Like, I always wanted to play drums, but I never wanted to be like, you know, like a pop band or whatever. And then because of him, I wouldn't be here, because of, like, had I not said yes to that. And like, obviously you go on like these big journeys and all that kind of stuff, and it ends in a certain place, but it's just strange to think if you don't say yes to one thing, like, you could be missing out on something like unbelievable.
Very true.
So
very true.
It's always worth just jumping in and
very true.
saying yes to whatever you can, really.
Very true. And I think that's the power of doing one more, more rap, one more event, one more yes, you know, and it can take you somewhere that you never, one more video, and it can take you somewhere that you never imagined you would be there. And it's very interesting. What's that ultimate goal that really fire you guys up?
I mean, the main plan is just doing what we're doing, but to a bigger scale. Like, this is our, like, music is now a full-time job, and, like, how many musicians get to say that now? Like, we're so lucky. And, every year, it's like getting more fans and we're still totally independent and we love it like that.
Yeah.
Like we're working on, we finished the first album, so that's going to be out in March. And, we picked out all the songs ourselves, wrote them all, whereas we're mates with people who have labels. And they'll show their label like 20 demos with 12 songs that they really want on the album. And the label goes, no, we like one. Go into this session with all these different songwriters and totally start from scratch, and they're just gutted.
Yeah, it must take the wind out of your sails completely. When you thought you've worked on something that you feel is like, this is what this is our creation, and then just to be told like no. Yeah, must, like, I think you've got to, like, you have that intuition, don't you? And sometimes we're wrong about it, obviously, but you have when you're writing a song, when it's like, that's how I wanted this song to come out. When you've got it and you've got it right, it's like, it. So to be told by someone else, like, actually, we don't think that's right. Yeah.
Who probably don't even have your best interests at heart, because they're probably like, oh, is this going to do well on TikTok? It's not thinking about the actual song. And
half the time it's like, well, we want you in with our mate who's a producer, or we want you in with our mate who's a writing guy. And it's a lot of matey stuff in the industry that I think, we've always loved doing it independently. Always just loved having the control to do it how we want to do it.
And I think the fans can see right through you if you're releasing songs that your heart isn't fully in.
Strong.
I completely agree with that.
Especially when they're involved in your journey as well.
Like,
the fans are so involved.
You kind of do it for, like, you do it for yourself, but at the end of the day, you do it for them, and you can't do it without them. So it's kind of, you have to be conscious of what you're giving your fans so that they can give you back like what you want, which is basically the ability to continue giving to them. And it's a constant back and forth, and like having a good relationship with your fans, and always like making sure that you're putting out what you want to put out, and they know that it's what you want to put out, so it feels authentic. Because like in certain, like in pop music, generally speaking, like a lot of the time that's not the case, where like an artist won't want to put out what they want to put out. You look at this is like broadly speaking, but you look at like the One Direction stuff, and then you look at what each individual guy has gone to do post that. None of it sounds like One Direction. So is that maybe because they've done it for so long and they don't want to do it anymore, maybe? Or is it because that's really not what they wanted to do, and that's not the image of like their favourite genre of music? Might be the case, but like that's what the joy of doing it independently is, that you have that power to do what you want to do.
And I think that's an interesting point on the One Direction, because that's maybe what contributed to them not being able to stick together in the band for ages. You know what I mean? When you look at it and you go, because that could have been, it's not like One Direction, but with the other side of this, it's like, all right, maybe they weren't making the music they wanted to, but the music did pretty well for them. So but to be doing that well, and then still not be, still not want to keep it going for a as long time. Like, I mean, that's the other, like, when you're talking plan A for us, it's like, for me, it's longevity. Like, I just want to make sure we're in a position to be able to do this for as long as we can. And I wonder if it's like, you can't, like, surely you can't motivate yourself to do that if you're not getting out on stage and playing the songs that you want to play. You're not getting out and performing how you want to perform. And I think that's one marker when you look at a band like One Direction, or an artist like that who's had great success but then not managed to sort of like keep it going, and you think maybe that's because they're not getting that satisfaction of necessarily following it how they want to follow it.
Oh yeah, like at the end of the day, we make music for us and the fans, not a random record label dude that probably doesn't have your best interests at heart. It's kind of
it. Like, there may come a time where that is the case, and someone comes along with an offer that you can't refuse. But I think it's having your integrity to be able to know what's right for you, know what's right for what's going on. And that's the benefit of having done this for so long without a record label or someone to like sort of look over the top and loom over and pull the strings, is that we know what's right for us. And then anyone who would be to come into Team Bronnie and see the project and want to help out and be in control in a certain way, there is an element of like, we've been doing this for so long, we know what works. Like, don't try and push an agenda on it, which is quite nice. So yeah.
Pete, remember you were talking about there are a lot of musicians that that they get fed up of trying and trying and trying. At some point they might give up, right? So I think that's like a human character, because we get tired of trying so many times and not getting the result or the vision, or getting closer to the vision that we have in our mind. So what happens when those doubting times come to you? I would assume that as a band, it might make it easier, because if somebody's down, the others can pick the others up,
Definitely. I think that, in our case, as the three of us, I don't think we've ever had a moment where we've had to pick one of the other ones properly up off the floor. You know what I mean? And go like, come on, but like definitely, I know that it can be tough, and it's sort of like I was saying before. I do think there's almost like a universal thing of like, I think there's like if you really love music, things will pull you back into music, whether you want them or not. Like I say, whether it be like, for me, it was like a meeting with Bron. There was another one where I was chatting to a family friend, and I was saying like, oh, like I think I'm done with it, and they were saying, you know, they really convinced me to stick with it and stuff, and that was when I was about 18. And there's been a couple of moments like that where I think something in the universe, just I think if it's the right thing for you, will just sort of push you back into line on this. Like,
and I feel like when we're all together, it's like, because we're so close, there's no, if you're having a down day, it's like we're each other's therapists. So like nothing builds up, and there's no I don't know what's gonna happen next year. You know, it's all just like, oh, next year we'll do this, and then we'll work on this song, and it's all just planning ahead. And we had this conversation in the car where it's like, what was it, like the double whammy thing, like you have to have talent but you have to work super hard. And what was the other one?
There was a third one, there's
that quote, work smart, not hard. But it's like in the music industry, it's like you can't really like you have to work so hard.
How many times you've seen where someone incredibly talented and they're working hard, but there's just something that's just not, and it drives you insane because like and vice versa. Sometimes you see people and you're thinking like, how are these doing so well? But there's obviously some in there that's like working for them, and it's just not it's just not resonating with you for whatever reason. But I think it's we're really fortunate that I think the way that we operate and we work, we never would, like, none of us tend to get that low because we've got that support inherently now, where it's like, whenever we're with each other, it's a good time, we're having fun, we're making music that we want to make, we're playing shows that we want to play and that. And so it becomes really hard when you're in that environment to sort of get down on it because you're in a...
The only time we get low is at the end of a tour, which is just post-tour blues. Like we played, we'd just come off tour with Waster, and Nottingham was the last date. And we're all backstage about to go on stage. We're all like, why do we feel depressed? It's like, wait, this is a good sign. It's like the end of tour, it means you still want to keep going. That's kind of like the only time when it gets sad. But it's
and even then,
sad.
but again, and I think that is the moment where if we didn't have, if we weren't in a band or we didn't have friends who were doing the same thing, that's the time where it would get a bit like, but because again, we just sit there and we're in the group chats going like, can't wait for the next gig, can't wait for this tour, and or can't wait to get and do some writing.
With people. Like when I was totally solo with no Pete or Chris, it was so hard because I'd be the only soloist, and bands, they're all like, brothers and sisters, aren't they, on tour? And I was just the only soloist there, and I was like, I can't do this alone. Like, it's too depressing. Like, you can't get excited with anyone. So I think it is harder for soloists, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, going back to Pete's point really quick, I think as like, if you're a musician listening to this, I think one thing about musicians, which is just like inherent amongst all musicians, is if you're inspired, you can be inspired by anything. So like often like you'll be like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this, and you can just hear a bit of music, or you can hear someone talk about it, and as a musician deep down you're always going to be like, oh, I'm back on it, like straight away. There's like, it doesn't need to be anything specific, it can be just like a conversation, or like say one of us is like having a bit of a lull. Like COVID was a great example of that. It's like how do you keep motivated when you can't see each other, you can't play live, like you can't be in a room playing music with people. But it would only take Bron sending a song over that she'd written, or like Pete being like, check out this riff I wrote, and straight away you're inspired again because you're like, oh, you could do this with it, you could do that with it. And that's kind of what it's what it's about, is like continuing to be inspired and knowing that like it's not always going to be sunshine and rainbows, but like there's always inspiration everywhere. Like even in your darkest days, like, I mean, some people write the best music in their darkest days, and like my favorite McFly album is a whole album basically about like how sad the songwriter is when he wrote the album, but it's a great piece of music. It's a great bit of work. So like, that's it. It's like finding inspiration everywhere, but like don't lose the spark to seek the inspiration, I think.
I think that brings us to a very good point, which is the power of surrounding. And I think it's very important to know, because you're, I think, blessed in a way to have each other. But as we said, a lot of people don't, and it brings us to a point that being surrounded by the right people is very important. It doesn't matter what career you are in and whatever you do. But talking about talent, so do you think talent exists? What is talent?
Yeah.
That's a big one.
I think there's like talent and practice alike.
Yeah.
Like, what is talent?
I think
what is it?
Talent is the ability to motivate yourself to better yourself.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
I think like it's an I look at like when I think about like talent, it's quite difficult in music because obviously it's quite subjective. Like you could be a talented pop drummer and just sit in the pocket, or you could be a jazz drummer and you can just have chops for days, and you could be like a big gospel drummer or whatever. But like you can be talented in very different ways. I don't know if you're into sports at all, but like football is like the most obvious. You've got the two best players in the world. You've got the man with the most talent, Lionel Messi, who's like the best footballer ever. And then you've got Cristiano Ronaldo, who may not have the most talent, but he worked the hardest. So it's kind of like, that's where where you go, I don't know, is completely valid.
Totally, yeah, because I think there's a, like for me, how I would define that is the natural element of it, where it's like whether it's just from how you were like raised, maybe like if we're talking in a musical sense, that maybe your parents are both musicians, you grow up by the time you're 3 years old, you don't even realize, but you've got a good sense of pitch, you've got a good sense of rhythm, so I think that sort of stuff, like I met kids when we were at school doing music or whatever who were like they're 15 and they're prodigies, they can they can play 6 instruments and they can work out the music teacher could say, oh, play this in a different key, and they just go, oh yeah, no problem, and and you're looking at that going like, well, for me that's like talent. They've got like that natural thing. It's like fair enough, they might have learned stuff as well along the way, but they had that something in there through their early development has made them like better than the rest of the people at their level. So I think that's an element of it, but I do think I think talent isn't I think that sort of natural talent isn't the be all and end all, because I think you can get there through practice if you don't have that background, but you'll have to work that bit harder. I think you might have to work that bit harder than the person who has the sort of, and I say natural, I don't think they were born a prodigy, but like I say, I think there's maybe something in those early years something that helps them get that little edge on other people their age range.
Like, I think my brother is a good example with this. So Morgan, he is 18 now, but during COVID, he never picked up a saxophone, ever. Yeah. And he taught himself grade 8 in lockdown, like a couple of months. And we were like, how? He was like, oh, it's easy. It's like...
They've been working hard.
He's like, oh yeah, it's just...
But that's one where I think I could work as hard as I could do 10 hours saxophone practice a day. I would not get grade 8 in a day. No, I don't know. So that for me that's an example.
That's talent.
Talent. Like he's got it. Like
has he been surrounded by any kind of musical?
No, not
just
but not with like instruments of that.
Yeah, not like classical instruments. No. I mean, your dad's like a big rockabilly guy, like plays guitar and all that kind of stuff, but never classical.
Yeah.
But it was just so funny. We coming back after COVID and there being a saxophone in our house. I was like, whose saxophone is that? So, Morgan, he's now a grade 8. And I'm like, what?
So he taught himself piano within 2 months, can play anything. I'm like...
So there are people that just have that something switched on in their head. And obviously it's not always music, but music's what we're talking about. But he's a great example of that. Someone who just seemingly has that other perception for it.
Like young comedians. It's just natural. It's just
some
natural
people are just
talent.
Funny. It's just how
In my perception, I think for me, talent is really hard to grasp. I would call it privileges because, as you brought it up, when you're younger, you're listening to your parents singing or you're being exposed to all those sounds and frequencies. So when you, for example, 10 or 11 or whatever, you have that natural instincts of like recognizing pitch better or those kind of stuff. But it's still, obviously, you're going to have to work very hard to be able to cultivate it and turn it into something real. But I would call talent someone, for example, like Adele, that natural tone of voice. Obviously, she has to work on it to be able to develop it. But I mean, that natural voice, that tonality is like talent. But that's interesting. Like, in your example, I think it eliminates everything. Your brother,
he's just he's a different. But no, I think it's the talent discussion is super interesting because it's like you say, it can come from. There are so many different ways, but I think you're right. Like privilege will play a massive part. If your parents are able to afford you, if you're growing up doing piano lessons, singing lessons, whatever it is, through your early years, that will obviously feel like a massive talent step by the time you're getting older, but it's a matter of privilege in it, because obviously not everyone can be afforded to send to music lessons, and not everyone has the time or whatever it is. So I think there are like talent is it's a two-way thing, where it's not always. Sometimes it's a natural thing. Sometimes it is a matter of privilege. Sometimes it is a matter of hard work. But it all, I think by the time you end up getting into into a professional world, or into a world where you're playing music a lot, how you ended up being talented is kind of, it doesn't feel as relevant, because you just see someone at that point, you just go, either they're good or they're not as good as the next person or whatever it is. But someone who's had those advantages growing up will obviously appear at that extra level up, I think.
I agree. So guys, tell me about the last single that you released, and tell me the story behind it.
Yeah, so last year I wrote a song. It was all just, acoustic. Totally forgot about it, being me. And Pete sent me an instrumental last year. He said, "Oh, check out this instrumental, I really like it. It's like a really bouncy chorus." So I was like, "Oh, sick." And it was like exactly the same chords, the same structure, maybe like a key higher or lower as this song that I wrote that I totally forgot about. So I sent him a voice note over it, like, "Oh, what you think? And here's the original that I had." And we were like, "This is so weird. It's freaky. The same song." Quickest demo we've ever done. I think like the next day it was all recorded. And we were like, okay, this is probably our new favourite song.
Love it. I love it. Bits.
And we started playing it earlier this year because we did my Liverpool gig February, March.
Yeah, one of them.
One of those months. And we were like, "Oh, let's just play it for a laugh. Just see how the fans reacted." It went off, because it's a proper bouncy, jumpy chorus.
What's it called again? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm going to put all the links to the music, obviously, down in the description. Make sure you go down there, click on those links, stream, go to their socials, and support them as well. Cool.
Thank you.
Okay. What kind of news have you got for people who are watching this, for your fan? What's upcoming?
Yeah, so we're going to be doing more singles, kind of like a single every month until the album comes out.
How many is that?
Every 6 weeks, really. So probably 4 more singles, I reckon. So the album's called Jaded, and it's a song that we wrote in 2018. Long time coming. And we loved it so much. Like, I've done so many EPs, I think like 6 now, that every time we were announcing an EP, the fans were like, "Great, but can you do an album, please?" And Jaded was a song that we were like, "Oh, it's too good to put on an EP, we're always going to save it for an album." So
it felt right when we were talking about naming the album, and it was like, well, Jaded's been like, that's the album song that's been there for years and years and years. So
it's nice to have it play. It's like it's place in the sun.
Yeah, and it's literally like all the fans, like we've been playing Jaded live since.
I think every single headline and support gig.
Yeah, nearly. It must be like 95% of shows.
It's so funny as well, because like coming back to recording the album and re-recording a song that you've had since 2018, and then it's like, right, let's re-record it, and then we're re-recording it, and I'm going, I don't play any of the same parts, and Pete's like, we need to like reevaluate, and it's become like the intricate parts of the song of like, some of it's changed quite a bit since the first time, so it's quite nice to like listen to the original and then come back and playing it live. I'm playing a completely different song now, but it's like, it's really cool to like be able to go back and have such a long period of time and like have like a nice moment for yourself to be like, oh, like look how far we've come, and like how much better the song is and all that kind of stuff. So it's been nice,
it's so good to be able to like see that journey that you're coming from and what you become. Guys, in this section, I'm gonna ask you rapid questions. Whoever can remember whatever the answer of the question is, answer the question first and then ring the bell.
Answer first.
Answer first, and then ring the bell.
Okay.
For whatever reason. There is no logic on this whatsoever.
I like it.
What was the first album you ever bought with your own money?
Me! Sorry. It was Rihanna, Good Girl Gone Bad, with my own pocket money in year 6.
Okay.
Good answer.
Who is your all-time favorite musician?
Taylor Hawkins.
Oh, ding.
What's the most memorable concert you've attended as a fan?
Oh, Britney Spears, my first ever concert.
If you could only listen to one song for the rest of your life, what would that be?
My hero, Foo Fighters.
Oh!
Which song of yours holds the most personal meaning?
This is a new song that it's not released. It's called Bite My Tongue.
Okay. What's the best advice you've received about pursuing a musical career?
Oh, don't suck! soup.
Yeah.
If you could time travel and attend any iconic music event, which one would it be?
Oh, Live Aid! The one with Freddie Mercury and Wembley.
If you could choose any fictional character from a movie or a TV show to join you as a duo, who would it be?
Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Okay.
That's a great
If you could switch places with any musician for a day, who would it be?
Alanis Morissette.
If you were to create a signature dance move for your latest single, how would it go?
What's like a good dance move? You can't compete, you know. Can't dance. I think this song Chris.
The sprinkler.
If your life story were adapted into a Broadway musical, which famous actor or actress would you want to play your role?
Miles Teller.
Hey, go, hey!
He played the drummer in Whiplash.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I can just see it.
Woo!
Nice job, Pete.
Every time I start thinking, be like, oh, that's it, and then what was that?
Snooze you lose.
Snooze you lose.
Snooze you lose.